So, what's this project? I keep talking about how I assigned groups and I didn't tell you anything about the project yet. So, this is basically a 5-part project. Each part of the project roughly aligns with a DOK level, and I'll pass those out in just a second. Each student's got a packet, which we're going to hand out right now. This is student work on top, but the rest are blank. So everybody got this packet that you're about to get, which is a pretty big packet. It's formatted like a book. And then they each got a candidate briefing for each group. So I tried to make it look like a real kind of cool little briefing. And I know that sometimes it's easy to think like, oh, it doesn't really matter what my worksheets look like. It doesn't really matter what my classroom looks like as long as the information is presented in a way that the students are absorbing. But I really think that making things fun, making things interactive, creative, and look really nice informs the students that you care about them, that you've spent time on them, and that this is something that you take seriously as well. If you're giving people like haphazard worksheets that have lots of typos and stuff on them, not only is it not modeling like what a final product should look like, but it's showing students that you haven't taken the time to really think about the materials that you're presenting to them. So I always try to make it a little bit fun and creative. So I gave them these candidate briefings. In the candidate briefings are some. You'll notice something about your packets. You can't open them all the way. I'll explain it in just a second. But in the candidate briefing, there were 2 articles from the Washington Post, which I didn't level a lot because I felt pretty confident in the ability of my students to pick through them, and I'll tell you how they use these articles in a second. But then in their packets, you'll see that they're taped together, right? You can't pull them apart. So I did that for all of my packets, which you might think took a long time. It didn't. It took about 5 minutes. But why I did that was because I didn't want students to be moving on to the parts after the first part before they were ready. So as soon as I handed it to students, I said, don't open your packets, keep them shut, and they mostly did. I saw the students who didn't, and they looked bashful, and they were trying to put it back together. But, but I see you now. But what that really does is allowed me to make sure that every single person in the class did that first foundational DOK1 step before trying to move on to the next steps. Even if you have students who are really great, they work really hard, they spend a lot of time studying for class and they want to zip through it right to the end, sometimes you got to make sure that they're helping the other members of their group, that they're not trying to do something before you explain how you want them to do it. So that's why those packets were kind of taped together. Can I have one of these? Okay. Yeah, so as you can see on, at the bottom of this first page that says Part 1 Background, there's a little box and it says Move to Part 2. So on every part of this project, there's an approval process kind of. And I did this because this is a work and life level. They're intermediate readers. I felt very confident that they could do all the tasks, but I wanted to make sure that they were understanding the information at each step so that they weren't missing something before they moved to the next part. So on this first part, background, this is a DOK level 1 straight up. They need to go onto the candidate's website, find out very basic information about them, where they live, where they came from, when they were born, what their political party is. And this wasn't necessarily an easy activity. It took a little bit of skill in the computer because they had to go to different websites. But I also had these articles available as resources for people who didn't feel as comfortable with computers. So that the information that you need from this is in these articles that I gave to every group. So groups had the option of either using the articles to unpack this first part or just going ahead and using the candidate's website. So as soon as everybody got done with this, which took about a full day in class, it doesn't seem like it should, but it does, and that's okay. So as soon as everybody got done with that, I would stamp their packet and say, all right, you can open your packet now. And they would open it kind of like those old test booklets. Maybe you put the pencil under and you pull it through. So then they could move on to the next parts. And the next parts, it's not as important that you necessarily need to do every step one by one and be checking in like very vigilantly. It was mostly important to me that I knew that everybody had the very basic information first. So that's why I didn't tape every page individually shut. Also, I don't have time for that. So on the next part, Part 2, it's called On the Issues. It's just going to a candidate's website, looking at what issues that they care about, and kind of giving me a summary in their own words of what that issue is. And this gives a little bit of freedom in the project for learners. If they're interested in affordable housing, great, they can talk about affordable housing. If they're interested in disability services, great, they can talk about that. And students really did end up choosing different topics, and that really made the presentations better, in my opinion. But I'll talk about some ways you could level this for different level classes after I've got done going through the packet as it is. The next page is critiques. So looking at the candidate that you're researching, going back, looking at critiques that other people have of that candidate. And this is really easily levelable because you can have students either just say critiques that other people have made or think of their own critiques. So this can be like a depth of knowledge 2. It can be a depth of knowledge 3. And that kind of depends on how much you think your particular class is capable of doing in the amount of time that you have designated for the project. So the last kind of physical in-class part of the project is this part 4 called the pitch. So the pitch is kind of explaining to a student what a public speaking skill of giving like a very brief summary of something you're talking about is. So I asked them to basically summarize why someone should vote for their candidate, and then I gave them a little note card, which you guys have as well, and they had to write down the information. So this is sort of handing them the skills that you would need as a public speaker or as a person in the work world, and giving them those step-by-step approach to those skills. So I didn't take much time in class going over this is how I would do a pitch, this is how I would present as a public speaker, but because they have all these instructions laid out here, and because I was going around to each of the groups and monitoring them as they were doing the project, each student got information from me about how to do this, but it was more personalized. So instead of standing up here and saying, this is how you do public speaking, you stand at one position for one point and the second position for this point, I got to go around and talk to students. So if students had a lot of experience public speaking, I'd say, great, awesome, can you expand that knowledge to other people in your group? Or if someone had never talked in front of a crowd, I'd say, okay, so the first step is imagining that everyone's in their underwear. So it really allows you to differentiate instruction when you have the freedom to not be standing at the front of the class telling people what they know, when you probably actually don't know everything that they know. I found out lots of stuff about my students when doing a project like this. And finally, the last part is the kind of presentation piece. So this is great for learners who really excel at visual representations, and it's really a great way to let them shine in the classroom. So you can see over here, these were the final projects. We had some students who were very creative visually, some students who were more straightforward. And sorry, they look a little banged up because I carried them to happy hour and back and here in the morning. But they're here and they're great. And I was so epically proud of my students for the work that they presented because it exceeded my expectations by 1,000,000%. They did such an amazing job. And I really think that what helped them do that was having this step-by-step approach, because if you notice on the part 5 campaign poster section, it says things you need on your poster, all the information you gathered in parts 1 through 4. So I've led them through what they need to do to present an effective argument for a person, acknowledging criticisms, giving issues and summaries of issues in your own words, and presenting pictures and visuals. So they've gotten all the things that they need, but they did it themselves. I didn't tell them how to do it. They did it step by step themselves.